Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today's episode is called Realities of the Non-Linear Path to Stability and Profitability. What a mouthful. This one's for the people who are tired of being sold quick wins, basically. Because the truth is, the real path to stability and profitability is definitely not linear. It's not overnight, and it's definitely not a 30-day template away. So let's talk about the myth of the linear path. You know, those posts that say, here's how I made 10K in 30 days, or even here's how I lost 10 pounds in 30 days. Whatever the goal is, the outcome that's specific, like, yes, that task specifically might take a certain amount of time, but that task is not promising stability in the profitability necessarily, or stability in whatever outcome that it's promising. It's just promising that in 30 days you can accomplish this at least once, right? So they're cute, but they're not the whole story. This is the hard part, right? Because marketing, we need to be clear and we need to tell people what our products or services can do. So it's not that I'm sitting here and judging or complaining about the way that marketing is being created necessarily, although there's always wolves out there, as we have discussed. More so, I want to help you be able to discern what you're hearing. Oftentimes, our ears are going to have some sort of filter that's going to be open to what we want to hear. And if we're in bad habits or if we're in a bad feeling, it's going to be very hard for us to determine what advice really is going to help us and what is more so coddling maybe some of our self-destructive or self-sabotaging behaviors. So when you're looking at these promises, and I'm not even just saying in marketing, even promises you make to yourself, what they typically don't tell you are the details in the years before that occurrence happened, where maybe they didn't make a dime, maybe they didn't lose any weight, whatever the goal is, or the part where that 10K month didn't repeat the next month, or there were months that, they had to pay contractors before they were able to pay themselves. We've been conditioned to think that growth should look like a straight line, like you start, work hard, and the graph just goes up. But in reality, it always looks like a messy scribble. Some months you're sprinting, others you're crawling. Sometimes you feel unstoppable, and other times you're wondering if it's all even worth it. And that's okay, because stability and profitability are not events, right? They are outcomes of systems and time and emotional endurance. When I say it took us years to get here, I mean it. Years of iteration, years of learning what kind of clients align, years of saying no to things that looked good but didn't feel right. Years of realizing that sustainability, it doesn't come from a launch, it comes from a lifestyle. So let's talk about what it actually takes to sustain a business. By the way, as we go through this section, I specifically said what it takes to sustain a business, not just start one. Oftentimes, when we are doing business for maybe the first time, or at least the first time in a category, we can get a little bit confused on, what's working in one quarter, why wouldn't it work in another? Because you simply don't have a lot of data. So I have 5 things that are not, it's not an extensive list of everything that it's going to take to sustain a business, but I think these are the 5 most important things to keep in mind in order to create a sustainable business. So, number 1, you need to balance your nervous system. You absolutely cannot build long-term stability from a state of chronic stress. If your business makes you panic every day, you're not going to have the clarity to make good decisions. If your body is constantly getting sick, if you are constantly injuring yourself. Sometimes the most productive thing that you can actually do is rest. Not because you're lazy, but because your creativity, your intuition, and your leadership only thrive when your nervous system is regulated. You are the engine. The whole machine breaks down if you overheat. Next, you need to, number 2, get used to rejection. And this obviously all of the things are going to lead into balancing your nervous system, because these are all facets of that. So keep that in mind, that these all kind of domino on each other. But rejection is not a red light. It is a redirection. You're going to be told no more times than you can count. From potential partners, investors, customers, event planners, even people you thought were friends. But every no builds calluses. The people who last in businesses are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who know how to keep walking with scraped knees, right? You understand that business is, while yes, there's a lot of personal, attributes to it. There's a lot of personality we put into it. We have a lot of passion. It in and of itself is not always necessarily personal. These rejections are not necessarily personal. People could love you, but they don't understand or need your product or service. It's something that's very important to understand, that you are simply sorting through people and trying to find the people who have the same problems that you have solutions for. Simple as that. And rejection doesn't mean that you do not have a valid idea. It just means that that person or that demographic is not looking for your solution, and that's okay. That's going to bring us to point number 3, which is you want to shorten the time between idea and action. I mention these are related because oftentimes with rejection, we feel the need to take a moment to rest because, if your nervous system's not balanced and that freaked you out and that whacked you out, well, now you have to rest. You don't get a choice in that, right? Because you've already allowed your nervous system to be unbalanced. However, if you're getting used to rejection, even if it stings a little bit, but you do not allow any time to pass between that rejection and the next thing that you're going to do, then that time is shortened as much as possible, then you're going to have the best results. So here's what I'm saying. Speed matters, but not in the hustle way that people sell you. What matters is your response time. When you get an idea, how quickly can you take the first step? Not the perfect step, but the first one. Momentum is built through micro actions repeated consistently. So the faster you move through resistance, the faster clarity comes. So again, if you get caught up in the emotion of the rejection, you're going to then have to go take extra time to balance your nervous system and rest in order to come back. That is such a waste of time, such a waste of energy, and quite frankly, a waste of the data that you just spent that time collecting. So if you can practice detaching from that rejection, you can already see how much time you're going to get back, how much mental space you have. And this is the kind of metaphor I have in my head that really kind of helps me calm down, because sometimes it's hard for us to see energetically when we're too excited in a negative way. We can, maybe just confuse it with, oh, I'm tired or something else is going on, easy to dismiss. But what's super important to keep in mind is that if you are consistent with yourself, with understanding, hey, I'm simply sorting through people, I'm going to figure it out, they're going to give me feedback, then we're going to be able to update. That's what's going to be the key. That brings us to number 4, be consistent with your systems. So you can't scale chaos, right? Obviously, because that's just going to lead to the domino effect of everything else we just talked about absolutely sucking. I know that setting up Notion templates and writing out SOPs, filming videos of these processes, it might not sound sexy, but you'll thank yourself later. Systems don't just help you stay organized, they give your brain peace. They turn chaos into clarity. Consistency is not just about showing up online. And in fact, you don't even necessarily have to in order to find success. But Consistency is about showing up in your back-end operations, your accounting, your communication, your boundaries. I can't tell you how many times I've met with clients. They've come with issue, feeling burnt out, and we provide an opportunity to turn it around, to say, hey, let's fall back on the systems. Let's say, hey, these are the boundaries, and if they don't like these options, then they can move on. Because it would be a scarce mindset to hold on to someone who doesn't see your value just for the sake of a quick sale, because it will end up distracting you and pulling your energy, right? So we always say, be consistent. Anytime someone is not consistent with this, they do not experience the lack of burnout. Instead, they experience the required the check engine light coming on, right? They have to take a rest in order to balance the nervous system to get everything back in motion again. So if you are consistent with your systems, if you are making sure whenever your reoccurring task is happening, so every weekly or every monthly touch point, you are hitting it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you are at the very least hitting it, then you're going to be in a much better place, okay? So that leads us really into the fifth one, which is use your resources. So let's put it this way. On one hand, stop paying for tools you don't use, stop buying courses you don't open, and stop convincing yourself you're saving money by cutting out things that would help you if you just engaged with it. So let's back up for a second. On one hand, it's very easy for us to say, hey, I'm not using this tool. It is a waste of money. Let's go ahead and take it off the list. And in some cases, that's going to absolutely be true. So that's a celebration. But on the flip side, sometimes because you haven't taken time out of your day to be consistent with your systems, you're not using those tools. But if you were to take those tools away, it's actually going to cause you more harm. So it's not that tool cost you money. It was the fact that you not consistently showing up is what cost you the opportunity, time, and money. So very important that you are remaining consistent. You're using your resources. You're aware of what's going on. I understand all of these things can kind of sound like, okay, well, those are 5 balls, right? And usually jugglers start with 1 and then they slowly throw 1 into the mix. And that's exactly what I'm saying. It's one of those things where start with understanding that your nervous system is going to react. You're going to have some crazy days, some ups and downs. Understand that does not reflect your value or your worth. Just know that it is more data coming in and it's time to take the next action that you may not have been wanting to take, because that would be the very thing that would be holding you back, right? This is going to bring me to the hardest truth. The thing you don't want to do is usually the thing that will move the needle. There's a reason it feels heavy. It's because that's the thing standing between you and your next level. Maybe it's finally hiring help. Maybe it's raising your prices. Maybe it's facing your numbers. Maybe it's showing up online consistently even when you feel awkward. Whatever that not that thing is, that's your glass ceiling. And when you finally lean into it, you shatter it. But warning, that same thing will break you if you let it consume your entire mindset. There's a fine line between taking courageous action and letting it spiral into scarcity. So for example, you finally raise your prices. Amazing. But then your brain starts panicking because a few people say no. So you start doubting yourself. You lower your prices again. You burn out trying to please everyone. That's what scarcity does. Courage, on the other hand, says, this is uncomfortable, but I'm going to hold the line because I know what I'm building. Scarcity says, this is uncomfortable, so I'll abandon the plan and start over. That's the difference between a sprint and a marathon. Okay, so this is why most businesses don't make it. Let's get so real. It's not because people are lazy. It's because they build their businesses like a sprint, not a marathon. Most businesses are only designed to survive a year. Or the founder's energy only carries it that far due to the decisions that they've made. And after that, burnout hits. Life happens. The system starts to crack, and they realize they've built a house on momentum instead of structure. And the real truth is, the first 3 to 5 years are for building foundations, not just the first one. You're learning what works, who you serve, how to price, how to lead. That's not failure, that's apprenticeship. And once you finally stabilize, that's when real growth begins. So if you're in year 1 or 2 and you feel like you're constantly rebuilding or that you're panicking often, that doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're doing the work most people skip. And you need to have the mindset that you are essentially in your own boot camp for 3 to 5 years. But the payoff long term is that you can finally automate things after that. You can optimize, you can scale. It's incredible once you get there. But you have to recognize that it is work. It's going to be soul crushing, but also soul expanding work at the same time. It crushes you to build you back up. Business is one of the most personal things you do in this sense because it shows you who you are and where your flaws are. And that's going to be hard to take. And some people just can't. They can't hang. They can't figure it out. That self-reflection is too much and they need to take it slow. So they build slower on nights and weekends. And that's cool. I'm not doubting that the nights and weekends is a model that works for people. But what I am saying is, and this is just so blunt, the most success we see comes from people knowing which cliffs to dive off of. Now, some are going to absolutely be dumb, right? You don't want to totally jeopardize the safety of your family. However, what risk are you taking by taking no action at all is a question that you always have to ask. So this is your call for transformation. If there's one takeaway from today's episode, let it be this. There is no shortcut. There's no perfect formula. There's only consistent growth, grounded leadership, and willingness to face yourself over and over again. And when you do that, when you balance your nervous system, you embrace rejection, you act faster, you stay consistent, and you use what you've got, that's when you reach true profitability. Not just in money, but in peace, power, and purpose. I've told my story many times throughout the last almost 100 episodes here, so I'm not going to continue to repeat, but I do just want to remind you that it was not linear for us. Not this business, not life in general, but we did get to the point of sustainability and profitability and peace, and it is possible. There's just so much you have to work through, and you have to be willing to work through it. You have to understand that the work is uncomfortable, but it's not impossible. You are absolutely capable. You have everything you need to do this. Sometimes you just have to take a nice deep breath and start with one ball at a time. So if you're building a functional solo or family business in the non-alcoholic industry, maybe you're opening a bar, launching a bottle shop, starting a beverage brand, or coaching others in this space, and you want support in creating real stability and profitability, please go to marinamars.com/contact, scroll down a little bit, and fill out the contact form. Tell me what you're working on, what you're struggling with, and where you want to go, because no one does this alone, and I'd absolutely love to help you build the kind of business that lasts. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Mocktails with Marina. If this episode resonated, please share it with another founder who's in the thick of it right now. And just remember that your path does not have to be linear in order to be successful. It just has to be yours. If you need anything, just let me know, and I'll see you next week.